Hello and welcome to Intermarifica, New Mexico, the channel where we look at questions of wonder from the perspectives of faith and reason, philosophy and theology. I'm your host, Daniel Kelly. Today we'll be looking at some more of the wonders of our culture. And today especially we're looking at video games. And I think most people know that like action games, platformers, those kind of games, they help develop our reflexes, our hand-eye coordination, all that kind of good stuff. But then there's other games like RPGs, for example, that help our problem-solving skills. They help us think through things that maybe we wouldn't encounter in our ordinary day-to-day life, and I think that's really good. And all these kinds of games, I think, should be art, whether it's through the graphics, through the storytelling, all different kinds of things. They all should be art. And some of the older RPGs, those role-playing games, especially the JRPGs, the Japanese role-playing games, are some of the first, those 8-bit and 16-bit ones, are some of the ones that really inspired me with some of my first stages of that wonder that is the basis of philosophy. So I wanted to talk about today the JRPG, so the Japanese role-playing game that started it all. The Final Fantasy 1, the very first. It was just called Final Fantasy at that time. So this is a very interesting game. It's very obviously inspired by the tabletop RPG, Dungeons and Dragons. Even so, a lot of the monsters are named the same things, or named the same thing with a couple letters changed. And it's very obviously inspired by it. So there's a lot to like in this game. I really like that it has a world that you can explore that opens up relatively quickly. There's not a lot of time wasted at the beginning with long cutscenes or anything like that. I like that it has real choices when you're choosing your different classes at the beginning, and that really matters. It changes how you play. I've played through it many times, and each time I've tried a different build, and so your choices really matter. I like this game has a lot of interesting rewards. For example, its spell system is based off the old Dungeons and Dragons spell slot system, which I really think is cool, because it forces you to think about what you're doing instead of just doing your best, spamming your best spell or whatever. You have 3 of this level spells per day, and maybe you have your healing on that slot, maybe not. It's very interesting. I like that those choices and these rewards, when you're exploring, you find more of these spells and stuff, and I think that that's cool, really interesting, and really good, really fun. I like that they're not fixed in, they're not afraid to try new stuff, because it is a new stuff. It's starting a whole new genre. So there's some things you would almost never see in a game nowadays, like some of the bosses are weak to insta-death spells, which is very interesting. There's one of my favorite things is in the Elf Village, there's poking fun at The Legend of Zelda, there's Link's grave, stuff like that. And just randomly in the map, there's unmarked things that I think that's a cool idea, that you're wandering in the desert and boom, you find this caravan or whatever. So I really like that. But that leads to some of my dislikes of this game. I dislike that very often it's unclear what you're supposed to do. Notoriously bad in that is when you have to find the airship that gives you complete freedom to explore the map. It is super duper confusing to find it. If you don't have the paper manual, which most of us don't from the old original game, you're probably gonna have to look it up on the internet. Not necessarily, but probably. Another thing I dislike is this game is so artificially lengthened by empty dungeons and backtracking and just aimlessly wandering through monster-infested places. So it just artificially beefs up the time without adding more fun. So I like that this game has a lot of you have to think through different strategy and stuff, but a lot of the combat just becomes mindless, and it's just artificially lengthening your playtime. So the most recent version of this, the Pixel Remaster, helps with a lot of that because it lets you save anywhere, and especially for the last dungeon, let me tell you, that's a huge improvement, and it lets you be able to turn encounters off, which is really nice. I played through it this most recent time on the Pixel Remaster without utilizing those, because I like the classic retro experience, but it really does improve it for the ports, like the last dungeon, for example. That really improves it. The worst thing, of course, about this is it's a pretty shallow game, and that's nothing bad on it for its time, because it's trying a new thing, but there's just not a lot to it. Once you figure out what you're doing, you figured it out, and there's not too much more to find out. So those are the things I really like about it, things I really dislike. There's 2 really interesting things in this game that playing through it that I thought of is that you see again this through playing through the first several Final Fantasies, but especially with this one, you see again this how Western culture and Christianity started out as very compelling to foreign people. This is made by a Japanese company, where the churches where you revive your guys are very Christian, and it's inspired by D&D, a Western tabletop game. So Western culture starts out very compelling, but as you go through the Final Fantasies, that drops away pretty quickly, and I've talked about that before for other video games. Another thing that I found really interesting is there's very little storyline in this game. Just a little bit. It's very shallow. In some ways that's good because there's not long cutscenes, but the little bit of story that there is, especially at the end where the storyline's kind of concentrated at the end, is that there's this big time travel loop storyline. Well, not big. There's not any big storyline. But I think it really should, because these people could do whatever they wanted. They were just experimenting when they were making this game. And I think time travel stories and examining the nature of time is very compelling to human people. Like, maybe it's because of our mortality. Maybe it's because we're bound for eternity. I'm not sure. But time travel and the nature of time is very, very compelling. Other games would exploit this much better. Other RPGs that we'll talk about in a future video. So overall, is this a good game or a bad game? Well, it's not bad. I wouldn't say there's anything that should keep you away from it, but my bottom line is I can't recommend this game because it's just too shallow. There's not enough of it there. There's only two. I really enjoyed it, but I wouldn't recommend anyone else to play it, except there'd be two exceptions. One, if you're just a huge RPG or Final Fantasy fan, and you want to see where it all started, yeah, go for it. It's not going to take you very long to complete it. Or if you're getting the whole Final Fantasy 1 through 6 Pixel Remaster bundle, yeah, this is just icing on top of the cake. You're getting that bundle for other games, probably. And those other games are good, and we'll review them later on so that you can see why I think they're good. And this is just a short, fun trip. If you have nothing else to do, you could probably finish it in a day, but that'd be a little bit of a long day, 12 hours, 11, 12 hours. You can finish it in one day, so it's short, but you could definitely just do it as a weekend fun thing if you get the rest of the bundle. And for that, I think it's okay, pretty good game.